Picture the United States Capitol, its iconic dome silhouetted against a darkening sky. Inside, a crisis unfolds. Not sudden or violent, but the slow grind of political dysfunction threatening the federal government. This is a story of fractured power, crumbling alliances, and governance buckling under its own contradictions. Thursday evening brought a legislative earthquake few predicted. A routine procedural vote on a massive funding package became a stunning rejection, exposing deep fissures in American political power. Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, had drawn a line, no funding bill, bundling Homeland Security with 5 other critical appropriations. Their stance was public, explicit, a direct threat to obstruct the process unless Republicans separated the bills. Then came the shock. 7 Republican senators, Ted Budd, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, Ashley Moody, Rand Paul, Rick Scott, and Tommy Tuberville, joined Democrats in derailing their own party's legislation. These weren't moderates hedging their bets. These were conservative firebrands willing to upend party leadership and plunge the process into chaos. In a closely divided Senate, losing 7 votes isn't just embarrassing. It's catastrophic. It exposed fundamental questions about party discipline, ideological coherence, and the ability of American institutions to function amid deep internal divisions. Senator Patty Murray, the senior Democrat on appropriations, emphasized the simplicity of the Democratic proposal, passed 5 uncontroversial bills funding everything from the Pentagon to transportation, all held hostage, she argued, by Republican insistence on tying Homeland Security funding to the rest. Her message to John Thune, Republican Majority Leader: separate the bills, pass the uncontroversial ones, keep the government open. Thune wasn't persuaded. Betting Democrats would blink under the threat of a shutdown, he pushed the procedural vote forward, convinced that behind-the-scenes negotiations would produce enough support. He was wrong. Democrats weren't opposing the Homeland Security bill out of procedural preference. They demanded reforms for ICE, the agency central to Trump's immigration crackdown. Oversight mechanisms, guardrails, and accountability were their red lines. Thune's response: none of it would appear in this bill. Perhaps future negotiations could address them, but not now. The collision course was set. Democrats had their red line, Republicans theirs, and the machinery of government funding ground to a halt. The White House sought to navigate competing pressures. President Trump, caught between policy priorities and government functionality, issued a statement emphasizing the importance of keeping the government open, without indicating he would pressure Republicans to accept Democratic ICE reforms. Meanwhile, the House was out of session, turning a difficult negotiation into a near impossible one. Both chambers must pass identical legislation, but the House's absence blocked immediate resolution. Plan B emerged: strip Homeland Security from the package, pass the 5 uncontroversial bills, then pass a short-term continuing resolution, CR, for Homeland Security. Democrats had previously condemned a CR as a slush fund, but under the threat of shutdown, it became the likeliest path forward. Schumer framed the choice bluntly: if the government shuts down, it's Thune's responsibility. Pass the 5 bills, avert crisis, allow democracy to function. But the reality was more complex. Thune had to navigate a fractured caucus, House Republicans unhappy with modified legislation, and the looming risk of political fallout. Both chambers operate under different pressures. Compromise in one often looks like surrender in the other. Underlying the standoff were deeper disagreements about immigration policy and executive power. Democrats viewed ICE as overreaching and in need of congressional constraints. Republicans saw Democratic demands as an effort to hamstring enforcement and prevent border security. These weren't technical budget disputes. They were fundamental clashes over power, values, and the nation's direction. Accusations flew. The Trump administration blamed Schumer for canceling meetings. Democrats blamed Republican inflexibility, and Republicans blamed Democratic obstruction. Meanwhile, federal funding authorizations were expiring, agencies prepared contingency plans, and federal employees worried about pay and work continuity. Stepping back, this crisis is less about a single funding package than about whether democratic institutions can function under extreme polarization. Senate Republicans can't hold their caucus. Democrats are divided over compromise. The White House is caught between policy and practicality, and the House is absent. Governance grinds against itself, producing noise but little progress, with consequences felt immediately. Disrupted disaster response, potential suspension of military and veteran services, and furloughed federal workers. Ironically, Senate Democrats claim they are ready to pass 95% of the federal budget, but Republican obstruction prevents resolution. Senate Republicans insist they negotiated in good faith and that Democratic demands came too late. Both narratives are partially true, partially misleading. What happens next is uncertain. Republicans might strip Homeland Security from the broader package and pass the 5-bill bundle, or turn to a short-term continuing resolution despite political costs. House Republicans may accept modifications or resist, insisting that any Senate changes respect the legislation they already passed. The White House could broker a last-minute compromise or hold firm, balancing policy priorities against the necessity of keeping government operations running. Democrats might soften ICE oversight demands in exchange for procedural concessions, but the window for resolution narrows as deadlines loom. This standoff illuminates the deeper dysfunction in contemporary American governance. Partisan polarization has reached levels where basic compromise is nearly impossible. Senate Republicans can't hold their caucus together. 7 conservative senators have already defied leadership. Democrats are united in opposition, but divided over strategy, principled obstruction or pragmatic compromise. The White House is caught between policy goals and operational necessity. The House is absent at the moment of maximum pressure. The machinery of democracy grinds against itself, producing heat, noise, and uncertainty with real-world consequences. The stakes are immediate. Disaster response funding could be disrupted, military operations delayed, veteran services interrupted. Federal employees face the possibility of furloughs and missed paychecks. Communities rely on services that the political stalemate threatens to suspend. Behind every maneuver and statement, the human cost of this dysfunction looms large. The press reports, analysts speculate, but the people living under these policies feel the tangible impact. Ironically, both parties frame the situation to portray the other as obstructionist. Senate Democrats insist that 95% of the federal budget is uncontroversial and ready for passage. Republican intransigence is the only barrier. Senate Republicans maintain that they negotiated in good faith and that Democratic demands arrived too late. Both narratives contain truth, but also omit the complexities of internal caucus politics, the pressures of constituencies, and the procedural realities that make compromise so elusive. At the core, the conflict is about more than numbers or procedures. It's a fundamental struggle over values, power, and governance. Democrats argue that ICE has operated with insufficient oversight and demands congressional control to ensure accountability. Republicans counter that Democratic proposals would hamstring legitimate enforcement, preventing the administration from carrying out immigration policies mandated by the electorate. These positions are mutually incompatible under current political dynamics, and resolving them requires trust, negotiation, and shared commitment, qualities increasingly in short supply. The human machinery of government is not idle. Senators walk hallways, staffers huddle in conference rooms, vote counts are recalculated, and contingency plans are drafted. White House officials make phone calls, attempting to navigate the maze of competing imperatives and fractured political alliances. Yet the Capitol dome remains stoic, the marble halls echoing with footsteps and tense conversation, even as the system creaks under pressure. This crisis illustrates the fragility of democratic institutions under extreme polarization. It demonstrates that even when both parties want to avoid a shutdown, structural dysfunction, ideological rigidity, and internal divisions can conspire to paralyze action. Governance becomes a high-wire act with every vote a potential crisis and every procedural decision a flashpoint. The irony is painful. Legislative compromise, a hallmark of the American system, is simultaneously demanded and feared. Democrats demand reform and oversight, while Republicans insist on policy execution without constraint. Each party views the other's positions as politically motivated obstruction. And in the gap between these irreconcilable stances, the possibility of forward movement vanishes. Ultimately, this is the story of American democracy in 2026. Functional but strained, capable yet fragile. Not the orderly civics textbook version, but a messy, often frustrating reality where basic governance requires monumental effort. Where bipartisan compromise is rare, ideological purity clashes with practical necessity, and the machinery of democracy moves slowly, sometimes perilously so. Inside the Capitol, senators, staff, and officials navigate an intricate dance of strategy, negotiation, and brinkmanship. The White House weighs policy against practicality. Contingency plans for shutdowns are finalized. Votes are recalculated, and new paths for compromise are debated, all while the American people wait, relying on federal operations that hang by a thread. As night falls on the Capitol, the stakes remain clear. The dome still stands against the sky. The marble halls still echo with footsteps and conversations. The machinery of government turns, however slowly, however painfully. And the questions linger: how long can this strain continue? And what will be the cost to governance, services, and public trust? These are the questions at the heart of this shutdown standoff, a confrontation that captures the challenges, failures, and resilience of American democracy.